Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
I will not.
Why not?
I'm protesting.
You're protesting?
I'm trying to, but you're making it easy.
I think you're making the podcast subject a little too obvious.
Am I?
Maybe.
A little too on the nose there.
But before we explain why, first I want to let you know to go do all those social media thingy things like share, subscribe, send it to all your buddies. Let them know, hey, there's these guys that have been doing this podcast for a year.
1 year.
This is a year. And we need you to listen. We want you to listen.
And provide feedback, please.
Right. And as promised, this being episode 50, we're announcing the winners of the Backwards History Podcast Anniversary Contest. Winners are, first place, Mr. Adam H. from North Carolina, Leslie P. from Alabama, and the third place contestant requested to be kept anonymous. You know who you are.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, winners. You will be getting your prizes in the mail in a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. And thank you for participating in the podcast anniversary contest. We really do appreciate it. Made it kind of feel a little worth it that some people have listened enough to be able to answer those questions so appropriately.
Many thanks, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you if you're listening, regardless of whether you entered or not, you guys make it worth it because we actually see people listening to what we have to say.
It means a lot. It really does.
Definitely does. Speaking of people listening, what other people have to say.
There you go.
It seems that some people in Minnesota want to be heard for what they have to say. Of course, apparently it has grown to around the country.
It has.
But it started in Minnesota when a man was killed by police, placing their knee, or one cop's knee, on his neck until he died. A little overzealous. A lot overzealous.
I'm going to go with a lot.
I would go with a whole lot.
A whole lot, yeah. And
some people rightfully felt angry about this. I know I did when I saw it.
Same.
I watched it and I was pretty livid explaining to my wife what I saw on that video. Mm-hmm. But it brought to mind some other instances. Of course, we've talked about this kind of situation before on the podcast. But it brought to mind the riots in LA after the Rodney King beating.
Right, and for those of you who may not have been around in the early 90s, this is right about the time technology caught up to where more and more people in the population were able to afford camcorders and, video equipment. It's not like today where everybody has a camera in their pocket kind of thing. Rodney King was caught on videotape being brutally beaten by several members of the LAPD. And there was an investigation and a trial, and all officers involved in the beating were acquitted. And since there was absolutely no justice for what the videotape showed to be absolute police brutality. And as a result, people were very upset, very livid, and took to the streets in protest. Not unlike today, where police and their brutality, cost a man's life, and people want the rest of the world to know, hey, we're not going to stand by and take this. This is something we want to speak out about. We want people to know this is wrong. It has led to the officer being charged with third-degree murder. I believe it goes to show, public outrage, proper protesting, not looting, not vandalizing, can lead to social justice. I can't really think of a better word for it.
I kind of disagree.
What do you got?
Vandalizing, when it's done to the parties responsible,
okay,
I feel is appropriate. The looting, however,
yeah,
I won't condone.
Absolutely not.
The The protesters turned rioters had my complete support when they went after the police department. And this is the initial instance, not up to, I'm not speaking up to them setting it on fire. I'm not speaking against it, but at this moment I'm talking about the initial attacking the police department and their vehicles, things of that nature. The anger and the efforts were being aimed at the parties responsible.
Exactly.
I had zero problem with that.
Same.
Still have zero problem with that. But when you start looting entities that were not involved at all, this happened in the LA riots. This is happening in the Minnesota riots. This is happening in the riots that are breaking out around the country. When you attack unrelated entities, unrelated people, whether they be businesses, what have you, then you change the scope of what you're doing. And frankly, those that defend the looters are defending people taking advantage of real anger, real reason for issue, taking advantage of it for their own personal gain. Hey, I see these people rioting for a real cause, but I want me a 55-inch TV from Target. I'm going to start people looting so I don't get caught. We all going to go.
Right. It's corrupting a just and reasonable cause to line your own pockets.
Exactly. And that's my issue with it. And that's my issue with people defending it.
Right, because it's not the same. There are people who peacefully protest and people who, as you mentioned, went after the police station in I guess a justifiable fit of rage. But those who attack Target and AutoZone and other places, you're just taking advantage of civil unrest.
Right. You attack who's responsible. You don't just flail about with whatever's in your way.
Right.
And I feel like it's very disingenuous for people to say, "Oh well, you just don't get the anger that's going on there, and that's why they're doing this." The police caused this. No, the police caused you to be angry with the police.
Right.
Police didn't cause you to loot Target or AutoZone. You're just making excuses. Right.
Right. It's just, which kind of leads me to my point. I've been seeing a lot of people compare looting to the Boston Tea Party, which we covered, a few episodes back. It's not the same. While they may appear the same on the surface, they're not. The Boston Tea Party was a planned act of rebellion against the Tea Act, and they specifically targeted the East India Trading Company to send a message. They didn't take product. They didn't line their pockets. They destroyed it in an act of rebellion. Now, while they do have, very similar themes to it, it wasn't one of these things of, I see an opportunity to make a quick dollar. It's no, I see an opportunity to send a message.
Now, we're not saying that everybody who was there at the protest and at the riots were seeking to loot and whatnot. Not. But particular individuals, no doubt, showed up there with the intent to do so and use the mob as a means to do it. Again, I have to apologize. Still have puppies in the studio. And if you hear some whining or peeping, whatever, I'm sorry. Oh, but this is the first time since quarantine started that me and Kevin are back in the same room again. And it is fantastic. But moving on.
I'm enjoying being back in the studio, I have to say.
Now, something that's been annoying me that I've been seeing on the internet is memes that show like the Michigan protests from a couple weeks back.
Not very long ago, but yeah.
Compared to the protests right now. And they're saying, well, why was this okay and this is not okay? Really?
It's like apples and oranges kind of thing.
Or why was this allowed and this is not allowed? And they're trying to make a distinction on a racial basis.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not. Like that's a reach. Because one protest, while armed, was peaceful. Non-destructive. Granted, did not cause any real change. It just caused the governor to have more ammo and to threaten to extend the lockdowns as punishment.
Right.
And the other was unarmed, but destructive. Even prior to the looting, it was destructive.
Yeah.
To the entities responsible prior to the looting. So that's the difference. The main differences of the two, one was non-destructive and armed, which, as we know, police don't typically mess with people who are armed in large groups.
Yeah, it's, goes against their better judgment.
Right. And then you've got unarmed people, or well, less armed people, because they were armed with the rocks and things that they threw at the police cars. But they're relatively unarmed people. But they were destructive. And you've seen some things happen because of it.
Right.
They got their point across because they were willing to do what they had to do with what they had. So you have one that's non-violent but armed, and one that's violent but unarmed. But the violent but unarmed got motion. It's kind of an interesting concept.
It is, on the surface, interesting to just kind of take in. But to your point, having exercising your Second Amendment right reinforces your ability to exercise your First Amendment.
The only thing, though, is Second Amendment right is only as good as far as you're willing to use it.
That's a very good point.
Because the Second Amendment was designed for when words stop working.
Call for action.
Right. My main issue with the looting, regardless of whether the entities are chains that have insurance or whatever and can cover all of their losses, it's irrelevant. At the point where you stop fighting the entities directly involved and the entities responsible, and then you start lashing out at anything else in the area, like the AutoZone and the Target that we can confirm have been looted. You then take your message, and then it's able to be perverted by the media, whether it be left, right, sideways, whatever, into the very rhetoric that is used to then set the policies or give people leeway where they shouldn't, that made or has made not only this officer that has now been charged feel like he could do what he did without repercussion, but thousands of others that we see in videos every single day now. Is the very rhetoric that caused police departments to be able to get the military equipment and the particular types of training, get the qualified immunity, be able to roll out these stats about certain groups of people being violent. Because when you let certain provocateurs, which admittedly, one of the people who was seen on video breaking glass at the AutoZone may or may not have been law enforcement. We don't know. Apparently that department has put out a statement saying that it was not him, but it was like within an hour.
Right. It was pretty quick.
And I don't trust statements that are so quick that you can't really investigate. And two, I don't really trust statements off the cuff when you have everything to lose if you confirm it was one of your people.
Right. Well, of course you're going to say no.
You're going to, regardless of whether you found out it was, you're going to say no, especially with the way things were right down the road from you.
Given the current climate.
Exactly. No. It would be in your best interest
to deny.
To deny regardless. But when you stoop to that level, you give ammunition to the side that you don't want to give it to. This statement applies to both sides of this, the police and the protesters or rioters, whatever you want to call them. Regardless of what someone else does to, air quotes, make you act a certain way or do a certain thing, regardless of what someone else does, you are still responsible for your own actions. Period.
Yeah. Period.
That's just how it goes. Regardless of what Floyd did to cause the officers to arrest him or put him on the ground, what have you, that quote unquote made the officer quote unquote need to put his knee on that guy's neck. He didn't need to do it for that long. He didn't need to do it like that. He didn't need to kill him.
No.
And nothing that he could have done could justify that. Same token, no matter what the police department did, what that police officer did, does not justify you destroying uninvolved businesses. That's on you.
Take responsibility.
Exactly. So, as always, we're just two guys. This time with one microphone again.
Just one.
We're not experts. Don't take us as fact. Don't send the Google, Facebook, Twitter fact checkers after us, because we're not claiming to be fact. We want you to do your own research, form your own opinions, trust, but verify.